Kwon Jang-ho. Following the postponement of high-level talks between North Korea and the U.S., tensions between the two sides are starting to rise. The U.S. administration is stepping up its pressure on the North, while Pyongyang is refraining from any official response, but using pro-North Korea media outlets to slam Washington. But the two Koreas don't appear to be disturbed carrying out their respective agreements, and the presidential office has sent tens of thousands of tangerines to North Korea, a return gift for the mushrooms following the September summit. We'll have an expert in the studio to help us dissect all this information, but first let's turn to Devin Whiting at Arirang's News Center for a look at the day's headlines. Devin.
Hi, Minji. A 7-member delegation of high-level officials from North Korea will be coming to South Korea this Wednesday. They're from the North's Korea-Asia-Pacific Peace Committee, and they'll be here for 4 days. Their visit is mainly to attend an international conference organized by a South Korean organization and by the province of Gyeonggi-do, in which participants from the two Koreas and Japan will discuss Japan's forced mobilization of Koreans during the colonial period. The delegation from the North includes Song-hye and Jong-hyok, the former who's been involved in negotiations with the U.S. and the latter in talks with South Korea. That's led to speculation that while they're here, they might also meet with the authorities relevant to those subjects too. But the Unification Ministry says it has no plans at this point for a meeting with the North Koreans, since their visit is of a non-governmental nature. And the two Koreas are holding a meeting today about the research they need to do together to connect their roads. It's the second meeting of its kind at the liaison office just north of the border. Seoul's Unification Ministry said the group would be discussing the schedule for inspecting roads along the east coast. The land ministries of the South and the North sent a 5-member delegation and an 8-member delegation, respectively. In August, they conducted a week-long inspection of roads in the west between the North Korean cities of Kaesong and Pyongyang. At high-level talks last month, the two sides also agreed to hold a groundbreaking ceremony for connecting and modernizing railways and roads late this month or in early December. But inspections of railways have been delayed by concerns that it could violate sanctions. Seoul says it plans to consult closely on the matter with the U.S. and UN command. Removing weapons from the joint security area in the DMZ, as happened over the past several weeks, has helped ease military tensions between the two Koreas, which are still technically at war. International media outlets are taking notice and calling the move a pathway to peace. Our Park Hee-jun reports.
Firearms and military posts have been removed from the heavily fortified joint security area in the DMZ, where armed soldiers from the two sides once stared each other down. It was done to fulfill the agreement made by President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in the Pyongyang Joint Declaration signed in September. This step toward establishing a lasting peace on the Korean peninsula is not only a big deal in South Korea, but it's causing a buzz around the world. At the beginning of the process, CNN reported that the two Koreas began demilitarizing one of the most dangerous borders on the planet, once called the scariest place on earth by former U.S. President Bill Clinton. China's CGTN referred to the JSA as the world's most heavily fortified frontier and the very last real vestige of the Cold War. Because of the importance of the JSA's transformation, the move is being considered a big symbolic step, an unprecedented step, and an iconic moment amid the peace drive on the Korean peninsula. Once the disarmament process is complete, the JSA will soon be reopened to tourists. Both Koreans and foreigners will be able to cross the military demarcation line freely from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and recreate the historic moment when the leaders of the two Koreas crossed the line together at the Inter-Korean Summit back in April. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korean President Moon Jae-in is shaking up his administration's economic team in a bid to refocus efforts on his ambitious plans to change the structure of South Korea's slowing economy. The two officials that will lead those efforts have pledged to work as a team to ensure their efforts are focused. Shin Se-min reports.
President Moon Jae-in's newly appointed Chief of Staff for Economic Policy, Kim Soo-hyun, says he will be working hand-in-hand with Finance Minister nominee Hong Nam-gi should Hong be confirmed. Speaking to reporters on Sunday, Kim said Hong will be in charge of managing forthcoming economic issues that need to be addressed. Kim said the government's economic team will continue to advance the foundation laid by their predecessor that pursued income-led, innovative growth and a fair economy.
The new presidential economic team will promote income-led growth policies to rev up job creation and boost wages. We have to overcome growing income inequality, the low birth rate, and slowing economic growth by accelerating policies centered on redistribution.
The finance minister nominee echoed Kim's remarks, saying the government will do all it can to improve the people's livelihoods and push for structural reforms that stimulate income-led growth. Upon being nominated last Friday, Hong said that while the economy is in a transitional period, South Korea has to carry out necessary economic reforms to lay the foundations for sustainable growth. He said the goal is to create a nation where all people can live well, with both innovation and income-led growth contributing to the economy. Expectations for the Bluhm administration's second economic team are high, especially after the first team led by outgoing Finance Minister Kim Dong-yeon and Kang Ha-sung, now the former presidential chief of staff for policy, had drifted apart as they were at odds over key policies. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The Foreign Ministry in Seoul says a South Korean man abducted by an unknown group in Libya in early July has been confirmed to be in good health, though he remains in the hands of his captors. A ministry official told reporters on Monday that the Libyan government confirmed that the man is healthy and detained in the southern part of Libya. The official did not explain how this was confirmed, since rescue efforts are still underway, but he said that the ministry has been closely coordinating with the Libyan government to rescue the man. K-pop superstars BTS have found themselves at the center of a huge controversy in Japan. A T-shirt worn by one of the members recently prompted a Japanese TV station to cancel their appearance. Lee Sung-jae tells us why.
A major Japanese television station has pulled an appearance by the hugely popular K-pop group BTS, citing controversy over a T-shirt with an image of an atomic bomb that a member wore last year to celebrate Korea's liberation from Japan after World War II. This comes as a Japanese newspaper slammed the group last month for, quote, anti-Japanese activities, noting the T-shirt worn by group member Jimin and an SNS message posted by the group's leader, RM, in celebration of Korea's Liberation Day on August 15th. Jimin's T-shirt was emblazoned with English words such as patriotism, our history, liberation, and Korea, among black and white photos of a rising mushroom cloud created by an atomic bomb, and of Koreans celebrating the end of Japanese colonial rule of Korea in 1945. RM's SNS message was posted more than 5 years ago. Given the global popularity of the group, several international media outlets reported on the controversy. While CNN referred to the T-shirt as showing an image of the bombing of Nagasaki, Reuters said the T-shirt showed an image of the bombing of Hiroshima. While many Japanese BTS fans have shown understanding, the issue has sparked an uproar in Japan, leading to a rise of anti-Korean movements throughout the nation. It also comes as ties between the two neighbors have frayed due to a diplomatic row over South Koreans forced to work for Japanese firms during World War II, and a recent ruling by South Korea's Supreme Court ordering a Japanese steel company to pay almost $90,000 to each victim. With the T-shirt controversy raging, BTS canceled plans to leave for Japan last Thursday night for the TV appearance, but the group will go ahead with this Japan tour. The string of concerts begin in Tokyo from Tuesday. Lee Sung-jae, Arirang News.
I'm Devin Whiting, and those are your news headlines.
The South Korean government is sending tens of thousands of tangerines from the southern resort island of Jeju to North Korea. Seoul's gesture comes after the North gave South Korea 2 tons of pine mushrooms in September. Our Blue House correspondent Hwang Ho-jun reports.
200 tons of Jeju delights, 20,000 boxes, 10 kilograms of tangerines in each, divvied up into 4 military cargo planes and sent to North Korea in a total of 4 shipments until Monday. South Korea's presidential office of Cheongwade says they are a return present from the top office to North Korea after the North sent 2 tons of Song-hye, or pine mushrooms, to Seoul in September following the third summit between President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, which was held in Pyongyang. The officials tasked with overseeing the tangy delivery are Vice Unification Minister Chun Hae-sung and Presidential Secretary for Unification Policy Seo Ho. The Blue House spokesperson said Sunday that tangerines were chosen because not only are they in season right now, but also because tangerines are rare in North Korea. He said the Blue House decided on such a huge amount as it wanted as many North Koreans as possible to taste them. This is the biggest shipment of South Korean goods to North Korea since 2010, which is when inter-Korean relations went spiraling down following North Korea's attack on a South Korean warship in March that year, killing 46 sailors. Asked whether the shipment breaches international sanctions on North Korea, the Blue House asserted it does not, as the tangerines are merely a reciprocal gift with no strings attached. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Now for more, we have with us Dr. Bong Young-sik from the Yonsei Institute for North Korea Studies. It's good to have you with us.
Pleased to be here.
Now, so like we heard in the last report, South Korea's presidential office has sent thousands of tangerines to North Korea, and they say it's a return present for the Song-hye or pine mushrooms that North Korea gave back in September. Now, there's a lot of speculation behind the gesture. It comes at a time when the talks between the U.S. and North Korea have stalled, but there's still questions whether North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will be visiting Seoul this year. What significance do you think this reciprocal gift has?
It's a very nice symbolic gesture by the Blue House, President's Office of South Korea. I guess it reflects the hope to secure Chairman Kim Jong-un's return visit to Seoul within this year, so that the flame of the inter-Korean cooperation and the denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula would remain alive. It's like to protect the flickering candlelight in front of the wind that stems from stalled talks between Washington and Pyongyang on North Korea's denuclearization. But the unfortunate reality is that it is basically a symbolic gesture. It does not have anything to do with concrete and substantial progress on the front of inter-Korean economic cooperation and the process of denuclearization and diplomatic normalization talks between Washington and Pyongyang. So, judging from the original schedule espoused by the Moon Jae-in government in conjunction with Chairman Kim Jong-un's very ambitious message in his New Year's address to the nation, then it is very disappointing that we only deal with such a symbolic news in the month of November 2018. We are only left with less than 2 months before the end of the calendar year 2018, and Chairman Kim Jong-un must be really busy preparing 2019 New Year's message. What kind of message will be contained in the next New Year's message by Chairman Kim depends upon his strategic view, but 2018 began with big bangs, with North Korea's participation in the Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games, first ever summit meeting between U.S. President and the Supreme Leader of North Korea. And South Korean President and Chairman Kim Jong-un met not twice, but 3 times in less than 12 months. But now we end up with stalled talks between Washington and Pyongyang, and inter-Korean economic cooperation still remains in a very symbolic level, like such a gift of the tangerines.
So despite the halt in communication between Pyongyang and Washington, the two Koreas are busy implementing the agreements that they've reached. For one, the South and North have completely withdrawn troops and firearms from the guard post on their border. Do you see all this adding up positively, though?
These are positive developments, so there's no question about it. But at the same time, I like to repeat that these are very basic first steps toward what President Moon Jae-in likes to call the construction of irreversible and sustainable peace regime on the Korean Peninsula. These measures are good in terms of using them as a litmus test to gauge the genuine intentions of the North Korean leadership and its military, whether they are interested in building confidence and reducing military tension across the demilitarized zone. But we should not be confused with the atmosphere of peace and sustainable peace. These are still in the stage of the testing. Both sides are genuine intention, so we have a long way to go.
So the two Koreas are also holding a second meeting of their joint roads research group this Monday at the Joint Liaison Office. Again, it seems that the talks between Seoul and Pyongyang have not been affected at all, despite concerns of sanctions violation as well. How should we be looking at this? Like, it appears that these sort of talks aren't disrupted by the North Korean-US developments.
No, I disagree, because these talks have been basically delayed or postponed. All the words describing the inter-Korean economic cooperation projects are such as research, groundbreaking ceremony, or inspections, or symbolic or iconic gestures. According to the original schedule promoted by the Moon Jae-in government, we are supposed to have far more than these. Beginning with the Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games, inter-Korean summit meeting in Panmunjom in April, and first ever USDPRK summit meeting in May-June. It happened on June 12th. Then the Moon Jae-in government hoped that declaration of the official end of the Cold War, Korean War, would be made sometime in August, probably in celebration of the National Liberation Day on 15th of August. Then the world would welcome the emergence of the sustainable peace regime on the Korean Peninsula and invites Chairman Kim Jong-un to United Nations General Assembly meeting in September. And by the end of this year, the denuclearization of North Korea and the diplomatic normalization between US and North Korea as adversaries, and the major massive economic cooperation between the two Koreas would have been already accomplished. But we have not reached there yet. And all these talks and ideas about inter-Korean economic cooperation still remain very early stage, like the symbolic stage, because of the US opposition to easing any of the existing economic sanctions on North Korea until North Korean leadership will take concrete steps toward the denuclearization.
Speaking of sanctions, now the U.S. has remained fairly low-key following this postponement of the high-level talks, but recently Vice President Mike Pence said that Washington will continue to exert pressure on North Korea until complete denuclearization. Now, there's been speculation that the talks were postponed because of differences over sanctions relief. Do you see his comments as a signal that the U.S. is not willing to budge in this matter?
I agree that the United States does not appear to be interested in lifting economic sanctions until its demands for verifiable and concrete denuclearization steps to be taken by North Korean leadership. So the stalled dialogue and negotiation between Pyongyang and Washington seems to take a very long time. And it is kind of belief in Washington that time favors the United States, not North Korea. Think about it. Since the inauguration of the Kim Jong-un leadership in 2011, national economy in North Korea did not record any spectacular annual growth. The average annual growth rate of North Korean economy since 2011, except for the year 2016, remains very low at 1%. We South Koreans are concerned about very anemic economic growth of our economy at mid 2% range. Think about it, North Korean economy, which is far smaller than South Korea's, grew only 1% a year. And last year, according to Bank of Korea record, North Korean economy actually shrank by 3.5%. Who knows how much more damage has been done by North Korean economy this year, 2018, since North Korea has been placed extremely harsh economic sanctions. So it is a strategic calculation by the Trump administration that waiting will increase the pressure on North Korean leadership to come out clean with its nuclear warheads and intercontinental ballistic missiles. So there is no need to rush for the United States.
On a similar note, the defense and foreign ministers of the U.S. and China met in Washington last Friday. Here, the U.S. got assurances from China that sanctions will remain on North Korea. With China seemingly on the U.S. side, does that also mean that the North Korea will be left with little option on its part?
I think it is too early for Chinese leadership to ease economic sanctions on North Korea, although China would love to use North Korea as a bargaining chip to get the positive outcomes in the context of its trade war with the United States. Because China does not want to be the main target of the United States. China has its own problems in its plate. So China, I don't think China can afford to take a different position from that of the United States when it comes to dealing with nuclear North Korea, at least for a while. I don't think the Xi Jinping government has reached the tipping point to ease economic sanctions in retaliation to the Trump administration's trade war and other pressure on China. Because for Chinese government and Chinese people, those most important country they need to protect is not North Korea, but China.
So North Korea hasn't given an official response to the delay of the talks, but a pro-North Korean newspaper, the Chosun Shinbo, said the talks with the U.S. will not be necessary if it's going to stick to the status quo. Do you think this is in relevance to Trump's recent comments saying that he's in no rush?
I think so. And North Korean government and its people are clearly disappointed by a lack of progress in terms of the United States supporting the North Korea's argument that we have to rush to end the existing hostility on the Korean Peninsula, and the United States would support North Korea pursuing the Pyeongjin policy, the simultaneous pursuit of building nuclear power state on one hand and the economically prosperous nation on the other hand. The message is very clear from Washington that yes, we will pursue North Korea moving away from nuclear weapons and missiles and moving closer to economic prosperity. But there is a condition, absolute condition. That is, North Korea has to give up its nuclear weapons and missiles first. Then the United States will open the door so that there will be international support and the promotion of the economic mutual benefits between North Korea and the rest of the world to take place. But since Trump administration does not relent its original demand, then it seems like North Korean leadership has increasingly been frustrated by this lack of move by Washington. But again, as I said, that at least for a while, the time favors the United States. And if North Korea is going to resume its missile and nuclear test, then North Korean leadership will cross the point of no return. South Korean government will not have any say in trying to persuade the international community that we have to give North Korea economic incentives so that North Korean leadership is going to move away from nuclear weapons and move closer to the economic development once, as I said again, once North Korea resume its missile and nuclear tests.
So you did touch upon it, but the same newspaper touched upon the Pyeongjin policy of economic growth and nuclear weapons development. Do you think Pyongyang is trying to, what message is Pyongyang trying to relay through this?
I think it's a very subtle and early warning that the message that the North Korean leadership, if the current situations continue, might have to go back to the original interpretation of the Pyeongjin policy. That's very subtle and ambiguous as a message, and it is very important to pay attention to the fact that it was expressed by relatively low level and official in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of North Korean government whose main responsibility is research. So there has not been outright an official threat by high-ranked government official representing the entire North Korea yet. So it is more like a probing the possibility of the United States backing away from its hardline policy toward North Korea. But we'll see how North Korean leadership is going to control the levels and the formats of saying the same message.
Okay, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for your insights.
You're welcome.
And that brings us to the end of our show. Thanks for watching and see you again soon. Goodbye.
Literally speaking, the mind engraved on paper. Paper comforter. Where to go now? The man, slowly inclining his head in the direction of his soul's destination, opens his mouth, looking dead